these people who grow up in a world of slavery, they're surrounded by slavery. It's this old historic tradition as part of their culture. Nonetheless, they stand up and declare their independence upon this abstract idea. They say, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And what that means is every human being has a natural rightful claim to his own person, to his own property, to his own freedom. And as they described that, they actually meant all human beings. All human beings, including the very human beings who were being enslaved right in front of their eyes.
Let me throw this out there, and then let's dive into Jefferson for a bit, because as you know, Jefferson invented slavery. He wrote it. He wrote it in. First guy to come up with it. It was an amazing invention of his.
For those in the audience who don't know, John's being facetious right there.
The Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal.
Yeah.
Even though the guys who wrote it didn't see black people as men. They
did.
I might have stole this from you. So in which case, take it as a compliment.
Okay.
The Pythagorean theorem that says
A squared plus B squared equals C squared. There you go.
It was true before they discovered it.
Before Pythagoras discovered it.
It was true after
right.
he discovered it. The discovery of all men being equal, even though they couldn't see that it also included them, it also included women, it also included Native Americans, they stumbled on a truth that was more powerful than their limited minds at the time could handle.
Well, I agree with part of what you're saying, and I'm going to disagree with the other part. Yes, they discovered this amazing truth that is revolutionary. It is earth-shaking. It's the foundation of justice. The fact that justice begins. The whole premise is to identify a human being as a human being and treat him as a human being, right?
In my terms, as a sovereign, you are a sovereign country unto yourself.
Yes, and that means not identifying a human being as a non-human animal who should be domesticated or have a leash put around him or something like that. The Americans stumble into that. And what's amazing to me, this took years of research to figure this out. When they said all men are created equal, they actually meant all human beings. They meant women too. They meant people with black skin. The case of the Declaration, the proof is contained right there in the document. So the Continental Congress had adopted a resolution by Richard Henry Lee for to be independent from Britain.
To separate.
But the Continental Congress wanted something more. They wanted a formal declaration explaining why they were going to be independent. So they established a committee of 5 people to go write a Declaration of Independence. And on that committee was Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, Ben Franklin, among others. And Adams went to Jefferson and he said, Tom, you need to write this draft for 2 reasons. Number one, you are 10 times a better writer than I am. And that had to pain Adams because Adams had a huge ego. And he said, number 2, I'm John Adams. I'm kind of a jerk. I have enemies everywhere. If I write this, a lot of people are going to dismiss it or reject it just because it came from me. At that time, Thomas Jefferson was relatively unknown outside of Virginia. So Jefferson writes the first draft. And it's a beautiful document. It's more or less what ends up being the Declaration. There are some edits made and some changes. But in that middle part where the Declaration is listing all those grievances against the king.
By the way, I love that part. We always talk about the first part.
Right.
We always talk about our lives and sacred honor, the ending part. But there's this meaty part in the middle where we list the grievances against the king.
It's a blueprint for constitutional government.
And so many of those grievances can hold up today.
That's right. That's right. He has sent swarms of bureaucrats, right, to eat out our substance.
So, you talk about or having the place of governmental business to be in a far place. I forget the terminology. Too far to actually be able to have a job and get there and do your bit. It's like, wait a second. That sounds like the DMV to me.
If you take those grievances against the king, what you find is a blueprint for constitutional government, right there. There's all the lessons for constitutionalism are there. Well, in writing those grievances, Jefferson pens the longest accusation against the king, far and away the longest. It's a lengthy paragraph. And it is for the crime and the sin and the injustice. King George III continues to protect the Atlantic slave trade. He continues to protect the institution of slavery. Numerous colonies had tried to take steps, legislative steps, to reduce the scope of slavery, to stop the importation of slaves, and every time George III would use his ultimate universal monarchical veto to squash those things. And in that, when he's describing what slavery is, Jefferson writes that the king has protected this trade where men, and he capitalizes all three letters, M-E-N, where men are bought and sold as if they're property. That's how Jefferson describes slaves. They are men being bought and sold as if they're property. And so the point is, when you connect that with that famous second sentence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And then there in the middle part of the document, he's describing African slaves as men. It's very clear that Jefferson realizes slaves are human beings. They have the exact same natural rights as all other human beings.
Then square. I've heard this one over and over again. Then square how anti-slavery Jefferson has slaves, has babies with slaves, keeps those babies as slaves. Square that. So in other words, square the principle with the flawed man.
Right. Well, he's a flawed man. He doesn't live up to his principles perfectly, but he's
unlike you and me.
Of course, right? We're perfect. We're flawless. But he doesn't live up to the principles he espouses, and yet those principles, they are the ideas of freedom. They're the foundation of freedom.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.